Welcome back to the 3D Cookup Show. Today, we're kind of on a schedule. We have 12 hours to create a whole 3D product animation. I've got one big problem though. I've got no product. Which makes this whole thing a little bit more interesting. Because we're not only going to create the whole 3D product animation, we're also going to create our very own product. One thing I do know, it's going to be a tech product. Which means in 12 hours, I'm going to create a product, model it, create a storyboard, and finish the whole animation. What inspired me to do this project is actually this rabbit AI thing that came out a few weeks ago. You've probably seen it, it went kind of viral on Instagram. So we're going to use this as our inspiration material. And before we lose any more time, let's start creating our product. We are back at the function to look for some reference material. Let's see what we can find. Alright boys, I'm done. I'm going to pick one of the colors that I use in my NeverFollowOrders branding, and that will be the main color of the product. I might even create the product in all of the three colorways, which I think will look pretty cool because it kind of resembles one of these old iPod ads Apple always used to make. I'm going to start designing a draft of the product in Illustrator from all sides, and we'll decide what kind of buttons, what kind of ports, and in general what kind of functions the whole thing will have. I'm gonna be yapping about. Okay guys, this is the defining step in the whole process. We're gonna actually design our product. So how do we go about this? First off, I went to Dream Studio, which is an AI image creation website, and I played around with some prompts to get some reference material for my device. As I had a few images that I liked, I quickly marked the parts on the devices that I thought looked cool, and afterwards I started creating the actual design of my product. Well, as I already know the basic shape, I will start designing the thing from all sides, which means I went into Illustrator and I made a quick draft for each angle of the product. So front, back side, left, right, top and bottom. In this step, I also decided where the screen was, how big it was, and where the buttons would be placed on the device. Alright, as I had every part of my device mapped out, I was ready to export my draft and import it into Blender. I imported it as reference images, duplicated it once, mirrored it to 90 degrees, and that way I had both angles that I needed to start creating the actual device. So I started modeling the main body of the device, which was just a rectangle. I created all of the buttons, a little scroll wheel on the side, and everything was made out of very basic shapes. So just cubes and spheres most of the time. I also went into edit mode to create, for example, the joysticks, and I also sculpted a lot of detail on all of the buttons, because especially when we're going to start filming the close-ups, it's important that stuff has a little bit of detail. What is also very important if you create devices and such is if you have buttons, always make a cutout behind the button, which is slightly bigger than the actual size of the button. That makes the product look way more realistic. What is also good is if you separate the object into separate parts. So for example, you could have a little divider line on the front plate, on the back side, basically any big part of the device, so it looks like the device is actually put together out of separate objects, which is the actual way that products are made, of course. As I had the basic shapes done, I started going around and beveling some edges, as well as creating a back plate with some little screws on it. The top part of the device got an aux port, and the bottom side got a USB-C port. And we're back. So as you can see, I actually finished modeling the whole thing. I might be adding some little details here and there later, but for now I'm pretty sure we can work with this. As you can probably already tell by the joysticks, this will be kind of a mix out of a media player and a little handheld gaming console. So the next step now is texturing the whole thing. I'm going to use the NeverFollowOrders brand colors to create some different color versions, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, we're gonna get to the texturing part, so let's do that. So what's next, you might ask? Simple. We're coming to the texturing part now, which is actually kind of fun. By the way, guys, if you're interested in seeing the full recorded footage of me creating the animation, as well as the actual project files with all of the models and textures included, feel free to go down in the description and download both of that for free. As I like the look of clean, simple devices, I chose a very, very simple, rough plastic texture for the main body of the device. The colors themselves I picked out of my NeverFollowOrders corporate design sheet, and here's a handy little tip. What I did is I chose all of the colors that I like the combinations of. I put one on the device and one on the background, and then I keyframed the color property on the texture itself. So I basically gave the background every color of my corporate design as a keyframe, as well as the device. That way I could just scrub through the first few frames of my composition and basically check what color combination I like most. Very handy if you have multiple colors to pick from and you just want to check out which ones work best together. I gave the screen a glass material, and I also added a little outline around the glass, which I gave a white material because most screens have that. It just makes it look a bit more realistic. realistic. I can really advise you to just have a device next to you or open as a reference image just to see how certain parts are put together and what kind of details are needed to make it look realistic. I hope I'm in focus, bro, otherwise I'm gonna go. I gave the screws that were holding the backplate a metal material. The main buttons, so the two at the front and the two buttons on the left side, got the same material as the main body, but I just slightly darkened them, so there's a little contrast between the two materials. I slapped together a quick style frame, rendered it out, put some grading on there, just to get a general aesthetic of the whole thing and see if the colors actually work well together. Hey guys, how you doing? Alright, we are officially done with the texturing part as well. From start up to this point, it only took me about 3 hours to create everything, which I think isn't too bad. As you can see here, this is the textured product. I actually created 3 different textures for it in 3 different colors from my NFO branding, and I actually think they look pretty sick. Now we're coming to the real sauce. We need to start animating stuff. But before we can do that, we have to create a storyboard. I'm going to use the Rabbit AI animation that we used as the main reference point, pick out some scenes that I like, structure them in Illustrator, and that's it. We got our finished storyboard, and afterwards we can start animating. So let's do that. So what's the next step, you might ask? At this point, I wasn't 100% sure on what the actual order of the shots will be, but I knew what kind of shots I wanted to have in there. So I took a look at my reference material, which was mainly this Rabbit AI thingy, and I screenshotted some of the scenes that I liked. Went into Illustrator, pasted them on separate artboards, and gave them a quick description. That way I could just always take a look at this and see which scenes I hadn't animated yet. To at least know how long each scene needs to be, I went onto Artlist and quickly picked a song for the whole animation, put it into After Effects, set some markers on where I wanted the scenes to be cut, and that way also had a reference point regarding the frame, so I could see how long each animation roughly needs to be. Oh my god! No way! We're very close to finishing this thing, but the biggest hurdle is still in front of us, which is the animation. Alright, so now the big reveal. How did I animate this whole thing? Sorry guys, I didn't have anything else for my notes. I wanted the start of my animation to be kind of like the Rabbit Eye thing, which basically starts with a dark environment and there's one spotlight, which goes over the product and just makes for some real aesthetic, cinematic close-up shots. That's exactly what I did as well. So I dimmed all the lights and had one main spotlight, which I animated the position of, and that went slightly over the front side of my product. In the song that I picked out, we had a beat drop in the beginning. So as the beat dropped, the light turned on, and we had the main product shot of the animation, which was the product just flying into frame. Afterwards, I wanted to showcase the buttons and the scroll on the side, so I put the camera very close to the on and off button, let it turn on, the camera panned up to the scroll wheel, which was slowly scrolling. Afterwards, I wanted to show that the device was available in different colorways, so I had a shot which basically split up the device into 3 and displayed all the different colors. Afterwards, I created a shot where you could see the 3 colorways again, but this time I planned to have the screen play some UI animations that basically showcase what you can do with the device. The screen animations we're going to discuss later. From time to time, I did some test renders over the Concierge Render website just to check if the actual rendered animation was to my liking. This way, I could also order these shots and instantly check if I needed the camera to, for example, pan out for transitions. The Rabbit Eye thing actually had a pretty cool shot in my opinion, which was the camera of the device rotating and the shot of the actual ad was basically tracked to the movement of the camera. I wanted to do something similar, so I parented the camera to one of the joysticks and let the joysticks rotate. Of course, I also wanted to showcase what kind of ports the device has, and my idea was to let the cables come in from bottom and top and actually plug into their designated ports. So I had to model an aux cable as well as an USB-C cable. I'm sure there's a different and better way to do it, but I just couldn't get it to work in one piece. So I animated the actual cable with a curve modifier, and I used that same curve on the ending of each cable and gave that a follow path constraint. So they were basically moving separately, but I just timed it so they were moving in sync. If there's a better way, feel free to put it down in the description. Yeah, in the description, bro. Put it down in the comments. In the last few shots of the animation, I wanted to have the actual packaging in there as well. More work for me, but it'll look cool. Went into Illustrator and created a very basic package design. Just use the NFL branding as guidelines, rendered out a quick product shot of the product and put it on there as well. Put some information and some little key elements here and there. Saved it as a JPEG, created a box with the same dimensions in Blender, slapped the package design on there, and voila, we had a packaging. The box had a top and a bottom part. The top part with the main design, the bottom part was just white with the NFL logo on it. And I also put a little plastic holding inside the bottom part where there was space for the device and as well as the USB-C cable. The separate USB-C cable I had to remodel, of course, which was was just a path that I gave a lot of bends. Just extrude the path 2 million times, twisted it, then use the middle vertices, pull them together, and put a little rubber strap around there. Use the ends of the USB-C cable that are already modeled and just put them on there as well. Then I actually used the box for the final shot of the animation, which is the device falling into the box closing, and then the box sliding to the side. I let the box slide to the side, so I had some negative space on the right where I could basically put my general end title for the animation. I went into my After Effects file, put all the rendered animations to their designated area of the song, and that way I could go over the whole animation and check where which screen animations were necessary. Went into Illustrator and designed a very simple UI interface for my device. I made a home screen, a little snake game, and a media player. I animated all these screens in After Effects, exported them as video files, and then imported them onto the screen. The screen was basically just a plane that I put behind the actual glass texture of the screen in Blender. Still got it, bro. So, did we make it under 12 hours? Let me check real quick. We actually did, yes. This whole thing took me 11.5 hours to create, which I don't think is too bad for a whole product animation. That means you can easily get it done in 2 days. And if you really wanted to, you can get it done in 1 day. You guys have now waited long enough. After some bug fixes and some sound design, here is the final product animation. I think this was a really fun project, especially because I had full creative control. And now let's give you guys a rundown. First of all, how difficult was this animation? I personally would give this animation 3 out of 5 default cubes. I think the skill sets required to recreate this are pretty basic. The only thing that might be a bit difficult for people were the screen animations, as they also required some knowledge of Illustrator and After Effects. But besides that, I don't think this whole thing is too hard to recreate. And now the most important question as always, how much could you charge for an animation like this? The good thing about product animations is you can sell this to basically any niche. Every person who's doing any kind of business is either selling a service or a product. Services most of the time require more of an explainer type video because you actually don't have something physical to recreate. But everyone who's selling a product, you can make a product animation for it. Of course, the style always depends on what kind of product it is, what kind of company it is, and who the target audience is. But I mean, that's why you're working in a creative field. You gotta find a way to please everyone. Quick disclaimer.
Please note that the pricing estimations provided are based on personal experience in the field and may vary depending on individual factors such as demand, client base, and skill set. Thank you for your understanding.
So I would say the minimum you can charge for an animation like this is between $2,000 and $2,500, which isn't too bad. The high end though could easily be 5 figures. Of course, it always depends on what niche you're targeting and who you're working with, but I would say charging $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for something like this is very reasonable still, especially because it targets a more commercial client base. There's not gonna be someone sitting at home with no budget and a 9 to 5 who just magically produces a product. There has to be budget beforehand, there has to be teams, organization, and most of the time an actual business behind that thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying if somebody has more budget, you should just charge them more, but you have to see it this way. How much value are actually providing for that person? And especially product animation is basically the visual representation of their product to the customer. That means if you're doing a good job, they will definitely make way more profit than $10,000. Artem, do you agree with this?
I don't like it.
Thank you, Artem. If you could do me a big favor, go down in the comment section and please let me know what you think of the animation. Anything you would have done differently? And of course, if you're feeling very generous, leave a sub, leave a like, and of course, follow me on Instagram. Until then, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next 3D Cookup Shop.
And jerk it out.